Hello, guys, and welcome to our new episode for 1000 Calorie cheese sauce. I am Sakhi, and to my left is Sundown.
Yes.
What? No hellos? Is that how the intro's gone now? It's gotten to the point where it's like, nope, no hello, just that's me.
Now the way it is now, all two of our viewers know exactly who we are. So it is just yes, that is me.
I don't think you even got two viewers.
Those two viewers are probably you and me. But
No, we get one view, and I think that's me when I check to see if the video's up online. So.
yeah.
But it is how it is. We're doing something that we'll enjoy. Hopefully, we get to improve our format, and hopefully, we get people who want to watch what we have to say about films and movies and books and stuff. Which kind of brings me on to the main kind of topic for today's episode, which is Harry Potter. Strangely enough, I mean the books being finished for, I think the last one came out in 2007. I think the last film came out probably 10 years ago at this point. They just had a documentary come out. It was kind of like a reunion episode. I don't think you watched it. I did. It was quite cool, not gonna lie. And it was like 20-year anniversary like reunion, and I was like, it hasn't been 20 years surely, but it was 20 years since the first film came out.
Right.
And I was like,
Yeah.
Do they do that? I'm pretty sure like when they did like the Friends reunion, it was like, I don't know, like maybe they do it. It was a bit of a strange one to me.
No, it seems like they just tried to they coughed out of that one. It wasn't actually a 20-year reunion. Usually it's the day or around the day you actually stop filming for the final time. So what would have been Harry Potter and what was the last one called? Deathly Hallows.
That was part 2, remember?
Yeah, Deathly Hallows Part 2. Yeah. So I think they were just like, man, we need a reunion. Let's do it now. 20 years. Woo.
Yeah, that reunion episode was really really cool. It had most of the actors really show up, and they're all talking about their experiences, both good and bad, but like things that happened. And I'm talking about the guy who plays Malfoy, and like even Emma Watson who plays Hermione Granger, and even the older actors, and they did quite a nice tribute to a lot of the actors who are in the films, the ones that have passed away since the last, since even that the first film came out. So they had like a black screen with all the names pop up. It's really cool. Like even Alan Rickman, Professor Snape. Yeah, he was in all of them, and I think a lot of the crew were close to him. But yeah, that it's really cool. The set, they basically went onto the set. The set's still there. I'm not sure if it's in the exact place where they filmed the show, but the film starts off with them going into like Hogwarts Castle and them doing like a full recreation of things. It's a bare cringe, not gonna lie, cringe as hell. Like especially the opening sequence. They did, they had all sorts of like ballroom dancing. I was just looking around like, okay, like
Ballroom dance.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit strange, but yeah, I mean, the main topic today is I've recently watched all the movies, and I've read all the books pretty much in order from 1 to 7, and in case of the movies 1 to 8, and kind of interesting topic came up where I said to you, there's quite a lot of differences between the books and the movies, even though for the most part they've done a fantastic job adapting the books into the film. And sometimes the film has done certain things which I like over the books, and the books have done certain things over the films that I like, and it was just an overall discussion. But before we get into that, I want to do a tribute to my Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have fallen in the playoffs against the Los Angeles Rams. I'm wearing this jersey as tribute. This sniffling away.
Yeah, you're talking about your Buccaneers, man. That was one of the worst games I've ever seen in my life. It was it was so bad. Just seeing, so the Rams were actually playing pretty decent. They were whooping you guys. They were stifling you on D. You guys couldn't move anything on offense. And then on their side, the couple opportunities they did have, they made use of it. What was it? Well, it was like 27-3 at one point, or was it 25-3?
27-3, yeah. I think that's exactly it, yeah.
And then you stopped watching because you were like, God, no, it can't be done. And I carried on watching because I was like, bro, I know what the Rams are like. I know what all these NFL teams are like. They're all for some reason they get a lead and they're just like, all right, cool. How can we throw away this lead? What they should be doing is first thinking, how can we score more points? Even if it's field goals, go down and score as many field goals as you can, because that way you're juicing the clock. You're putting more pressure on the other team. They're seeing you score field goals like it's nothing. So it's like, bro. And then if you're close enough to score a field goal, you might be getting TDs as well. Carry on putting that pressure. Offense needs to be doing the things the offense should be doing, scoring, and defense gets to rest and then do the things they do, which is stop the other team from scoring. And then they had like 4 fumbles. They were trying their best. They were throwing money at Brady, saying, "Go on, I dare you to beat us." And I was like, bro, the last person you want to give 4 opportunities to go and counter score was Brady, considering you were only like 3 scores up anyway. Well, just above 3 scores up. It would have been like 27-24. So 4 scores up, and you gave guy 4 chances to score. And I think, did the Bucks score on those 4 opportunities? I don't think he did.
No, because Brady kept on getting slammed to the damn ground.
Yeah.
So,
no, but you definitely scored on. You definitely scored on at least like 2, maybe even 3 of them. Because
I think 3 of them possibly, yeah.
Yeah, because then you tied up the score. I think you might have scored on 3 of their fumbles or whatever the hell they were doing, their turnovers, and then it might have been one of your own drives which you scored on as well. But the one that kind of summed it all up for me, Rams D comes out balling. They sack Brady, and actually they don't even sack Brady. They strip Brady. Recover the ball.
You're talking about at the end of the game? Towards the end of the game, I think it was the last 4 minutes or so.
It might have been. I can't remember when it was. But they strip Brady, recover the ball, and then like Stafford, all these boys like, yeah, skirt, let's go. And they get on the field, and the center snaps it straight over Stafford's head, and I'm just like, bro, how can you all be so incompetent? Like, it is so bad. The quality of football, and that's actually one other thing. The quality of football. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, it's been amazing. You know, the teams have been scoring so much, so many points have been scored. It's been electric and all this type of stuff.
Bunch of bollocks.
That's kind of like, you know what? At this point, no, it's not been electric. It's not been. There have been a lot of points scored, but the quality of football has been so bad this year. Like, just watching and we've been watching for about like 10 years now, maybe more.
This is our 11th season watching. Not to make you feel old or anything, but this is our 11th season watching NFL football.
Yeah, but it's not like we're completely new to football. We've watched a few of these seasons, and we know the difference between, like, you know, the Seattle style defense. We know the difference between the Ravens style defense, which we'd seen before. We've even seen the older games with, like, you know, the 2000s Raven defense and all that type of stuff, and the Pittsburgh D while it was still good, all that type of stuff.
I mean, I would say we know more about American football, like at least NFL American football, than 50% of the American audience that watches it.
Probably, but
a lot of Americans watch it are casuals. You know, they just, you know, it comes on Sunday, and if their team's watching, but like we watch not just our own teams. I mean, you know, I'm a New England Patriots fan, despite the Buccaneers jersey. And, like, you know, that Buccaneers became my second team because obviously Tom Brady went there, and Gronkowski, and Antonio Brown.
Buccaneers became your primary team because Brady moved over, Gronk moved over, Shady moved over.
Well, yeah, and the fact that Patriots, I was like, man, you guys are on the struggles. Even though I watch them every week, I was like, man, you guys are shit. Even this season with the 11 and whatever record was it, 11-5. 11 and
But
6.
every game you were hoping they would lose. You'd be like, "Ah, you lose," even if they were playing well, bro. So
It
like,
wasn't
nah,
hoping they'd lose. I was just like, you're a really shit team, and somehow you're winning these games, and I don't quite understand why. Like the defense was good for a good stretch. Even last year when they we were 9-7 or something. I can't remember what the record was actually. Now that the season's gone to a 17-game schedule, I don't know what you call the record. But yeah, it was an odd weekend. A lot of people calling it the best weekend of divisional round football and wildcard round playoff before. And me and you were watching these games and we were like, it's some of the most poor quality, American football that we've ever watched, because it was predicated not on somebody making a play. It was predicated mostly on people making mistakes.
Yeah. And it was like, it wasn't the thing that made it really, really bad and like difficult for me to watch was it wasn't just one mistake. There were tons and tons of like hundreds and hundreds of, well, not even hundreds, but there were several mistakes that people were making. And then when it comes to playoff football, it's like you can't go in there and just dial it up when it comes to penalties. So like there've been loads of like false starts. There were loads of like offsides and things like that. And you're like, okay, cool. And then in the Rams Patriots, I was gonna say, in the Rams Buccaneers game, I don't think there were that many penalties. There were actually a couple penalties which were called on the Bucs, which shouldn't have been called. So once again, you're just like what the hell's going on here? Especially when Brady's bleeding from his lip, and you're just like, I wonder if he was a hit in an illegal fashion. It's like, well, yeah, my guy, he's bleeding from his lip. What do you think happened?
He could have always just bit his own lip, but
but just look up at the big screen. I'm pretty sure they have one there.
Yeah. But the guy went up to him and said, "Look, I'm bleeding," and they were like, "Well, guess that means you deserve a flag." And it was
you deserve a flag.
It's like the team was struggling anyway to move the ball. Yeah. And then we didn't need any unnecessary like bullshit on top to kind of make it harder. What it kind of seemed like to me was, the Rams defense is just playing at a really good level. It seems that they've gotten into their stride, especially since they played against the Cardinals. That was some of the best defensive play I've seen when they played against the Cardinals. They just completely shut them down. But yeah, when they played against the Bucs, it was a case of saying we got 27-3 lead, and I was like, well, at this point, I'm not gonna really watch, because there's certain games that you carry on watching, like the 28-3 game against the Falcons in the Super Bowl, where you're just like, they're moving the ball, they're just not doing anything with it. So like maybe they can get something going. I mean, let's be honest, me and you were both watching the Super Bowl together with our uncle, and I think all of us thought, yeah, the Patriots ain't gonna win this one, 28-3.
Yeah.
And then I did some juju in the bathrooms. And then the comeback began. But there's like a certain momentum where you kind of like, there is a little bit of hope. In this one, I was like, the Buccaneers ain't moving the ball on offense, because he's only got 2 targets. Realistically, at the beginning of the game, Fournette was killing it. He was playing really well. But it got to the point where when it's 27-3, you can't really do much in the run game. You got to start throwing the ball. And so the reality was he had Mike Evans and Gronkowski, and that's it. But like, just to go over like the mistakes, so that's a primary example. The amount of mistakes the Rams made just to let the Buccaneers get back into the game, and then right at the end, there's like a minute left. The game's been tied up at this point, and the stupid ass calls that Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator, was making.
Yeah.
Like, why are you blitzing so heavy in a minute package, basically in a minute drive, where all you've got to do is stop them from getting a field goal? Like, and bro, keep them in. Yeah. Like, you just need to put people on the sideline, keep them in. And the last play, which got him like 30-40 yards to set up for the field goal, was he just went on for, it wasn't an all-out blitz, but it might as well have been, because there was nobody covering the middle. Then we go to the Chiefs-Bills game, where they've tied up, they were winning the game, right, the Bills. Yeah, this is before overtime. They're winning the game. It basically came down to whoever's got the ball last. And the Bills took the lead. 13 seconds left. Now, Mahomes is sick, but no offense. If they keep you inside in the middle, if they tackle you inside the sideline, the time's going to go. And yet they felt the need to do the opposite of the Bucs, which was play extreme level of prevent, leaving the middle completely open to I think it was twice for Tyreek and for Kelsey.
Yeah.
And I was like, 13 seconds? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I don't understand why they do that, because obviously you need to tell your defense, you need to go to them and be like, all right, look, we've done this in practice. We can't blow the lid. We can't let them all fly down and they'll get a TD. We have to have people deep. So maybe you put an extra man deep or something like that. But if you're all playing prevent, basically what that means is the next 10-15 yards these guys can get. And with Kansas, I'm pretty sure that a lot of their players like Tyreek, maybe even Kelsey actually, and then you got Pringle and these guys, and then you got their running back actually McKinnon. All of these guys are good at yards after the catch. So what do? They just let these guys run on the field, and I think Kelsey was the one who actually caught it and then got a few yards after the catch, which brought them into like comfortable field goal range.
He set them up for the field goal, yeah. When all they needed to do, I think at that point they only had like 8 seconds left, was tackle him inside, man. And the coverage that they were showing, I was like, why on earth would you play that coverage? Like in like the 8 to 13 second mark, it's a balance, because you can do the Bucs way of things, which is just, you know, pressure them too heavily, or you can do the Kansas, the way that the Bills did against Kansas, which is not pressure them at all. You gotta, I think at that point, like we were talking about a while back, last week really, was you gotta play like you normally would, with probably a little bit of contingency. But yeah, even the 49ers Packers game, that was who's gonna play shit the least. It wasn't who's gonna play better, who's gonna play the least shit football. And the Packers, and I hope Packers fans can finally realize what we've been saying for years is Aaron Rodgers isn't clutch. He's not your guy who in the fourth quarter is going to completely turn around your game unless he throws a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Which, like, I'm sorry, like, you get a young quarterback from, college, all of them have the ability to throw Hail Marys.
Yeah.
It's the ability on the receiver more than the quarterback to, receive or make a play on that Hail Mary. And they give far too much credit to a quarterback who does that. Rodgers.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, when it comes to fourth quarter stuff and like game winning TDs or drives, obviously Brady's like, he's well known for that. He's probably got the most.
Mahomes, he does that mad.
Mahomes has actually been doing well, bro. I'd even have Josh Allen over A-Rod at this point.
He's gonna get in trouble one day because his style of play is different from Mahomes. I know they compare the two, but you watch him like in the fourth quarters, and the guy's winging it completely. Like Mahomes, he looks like he's winging it, but within I don't know. It's a bit hard to explain. Like it looks like he's got an idea of what he's gonna do. In a way, like he sees Tyreek, and you can see him see Tyreek and say, he's open. Or like, these other receivers. Like, but Allen looks like he looks at the receiver. He says he's double covered, but I'm going to throw it anyway. And I'll aim for this corner and hopefully the guy will get it. And the defense will make a mistake. Yeah.
Yeah, but I suppose that's a difference in their kind of teammates as well, because I think the benefit Mahomes has is that he can literally just yeet the ball up and be like, yeah, Tyreek will get it. Because that's kind of what a lot of his like really deep throws are. A lot of the times he like I'll give him credit. He does identify that Tyreek is open, therefore he throws it, which you should do as a QB. But then there are times that you're just like, has he just thrown that? Because it's just like, yeah, Tyreek will, he's got to be open somewhere.
Yeah, he does Kelsey, that. Yeah, but what I'm saying is, when I was watching Allen on those like last couple of drives, because it was 25 points I think scored within like a 2-minute span by both teams. It was a case of like, he's just scrambling at the back. He played so sick. Josh Allen did. He really did. Like, they deserved to win that game, but when you're gonna play like that in 13-second span, then you deserve to lose. Really. And people are calling like, for the overtime rules to change. I couldn't care less. That is what the rules are. I still believe, there should be like a golden goal kind of thing where, well, not even golden goal, like where it's, I think they have it in college rules. I can't remember if this is the college rules where you both keep scoring until the other person doesn't score.
Yeah. But I think like, I'd be mad about the overtime rules But the thing is, you've had all of regulation to beat that team.
Yeah.
So they're not trying to lengthen the game out and make it like another hour long. So then it's whoever gets the ball first. If they score, GG, it's game over. If your defense actually, like the Bills' defense, number one defense, they couldn't stop a cold in that last game. It was just like, well, at that point, if you're gonna get scored on even after a small rest, well then you guys kind of deserve to lose. You're not upholding your side of the bargain.
Yeah. And then the last game of the divisional round was more of an example of what we're talking about. Yeah, Tannehill with 3 interceptions. The Titans versus the who did they play against? The Bengals.
Yeah.
And it was like, my God, dude, like really, like seriously, they actually had an opportunity to win. Yeah. Because that Bengals O-line was not letting Burrow set up for anything. He played all right. Like he did what he could to win that game. Is what I'll say about Burrow on that one. That was like if they lost that game, that wouldn't have been his fault. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Because
I was just like, man, this guy, he's getting hit. He's getting, a lot of pressure, and is why I worry about they're saying that they're gonna go into Kansas and beat them. I don't know about that. They beat them earlier this season, but I think the Chiefs weren't playing at home. Then the Bengals were playing at home. But yeah, I think those 4 games in the divisional round, perfect examples for you of what we're talking about, which is the quality was terrible. It was predicated more on, a lot of mistakes, whether it's by the offense or defense, not somebody, dragging a team to a win or anything like that. It was more pulling back, somebody pulling a team back to lose.
Yeah. And you can, the thing that annoys me is you can see this clear shift in offense is becoming like high flying, high scoring. It's basically like they're all mini versions of the Saints offense from like 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, where Breeze was like throwing for 5,000 yards. We're getting TDs on TDs, but then all the defenses have kind of as much as these offenses have increased in their performance, the defenses have gone the other way. And they're just all terrible. Like even we were talking about the Bills defense. I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe they might have been on the field for a long time. They might be tired and all this type of stuff. But you're the number 1 D, and then your team scoring as well. So it's like I don't understand why these defenses are all so bad. They all suck booty.
Especially in the AFC, to me. Like I know there's a lot of hype around, the Dolphins defense, the Bills defense. I think a lot of the reason why Kansas is having a lot of success and is why the Patriots did as well, especially later on, where we went to a million AFC championship games, didn't always get to the Super Bowl, but had our fair share. Was the fact that I was confident that the Patriots would at least get to the AFC championship game simply because of how bad the defenses were in the AFC, and it's gotten worse. Who can you comfortably say in the AFC would give the Chiefs a problem? At least regularly, no one. I think they can sometimes squeak out a win.
The Oakland Raiders.
Who?
The Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, nah, my confidence in them.
They're not Oakland anymore.
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas Raiders. My bad.
But yeah, I think that's the end of our 20-minute rant though about the NFL. It's something we're extremely passionate about. I mean, we've been watching it, like we say, for about 11 odd years, and it's my favorite sport to watch. Yeah, not necessarily to play, but we did a bit of that in our younger days, just like casual. But yeah, we'll move on to our main topic, which is movies and books at this point. So
yeah, the Harry Potter books.
Yeah, so watching that HBO reunion thing just got me interested, and I actually forgot how into Harry Potter I was when I was younger. That was the thing that I used to follow, apart from watching anime and watching movies and Jackie Chan movies in particular. I used to be absolutely crazy about Harry Potter, and I used to read all the books. I think the first book that I properly read, apart from the school books that you'd be told to read, was Goblet of Fire. That's the first book I ever, went out of my way to read, apart from, children's books. That was one that I went to read myself. And it was a bit odd because I started from Goblet of... You would think I would start from Philosopher's Stone, but I didn't, because I think at the point I started reading, Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets was already out. They were both already out in film. And Goblet of Fire was the only book that they had in our library. So I got that, but and I can't remember what happened. I think I must have read a bit of it, and then our mom actually bought us Goblet of Fire, the book, and I continued reading it there, and it took me a long time to read it. But yeah, that's how I kind of got into it, and then we got Order of the Phoenix later on when that came out, because Goblet of Fire, when I started reading it, I think that had been out for like a year or so. How did you get into Harry Potter?
I think pretty much it's the same way. You know, we had the books at home. I saw Goblet of Fire. I think the Goblet of Fire copy we had an awesome cover. It was like Harry on his broomstick trying to evade the dragon.
Yeah, and the Hungarian Horntail, the black dragon, he looks so awesome in that original cover.
He looks awesome. Yeah. So I saw that and I was like, man, I gotta read this. I think actually the first book I read was Goblet of Fire. Hadn't read. I don't even think to this day I've read the first three. But then having watched the first three movies, just carried on watching the movies. But I read all the books before watching the later movies. So that's just kind of how it went.
Yeah. Like, it's really interesting going back now that you know I was. How old was I when I must have read? I was in year 5, so that means I was
like 10, maybe.
No, because remember I'm an August kid, so I would have been 9. I would have been 10 all the way out through year 6, and then I would have turned 11 going into year 7 secondary school. Understand? So I must have been about 9 when I read Goblet of Fire, and now I'm coming at it from reading it again, all of them again, from the perspective of a 29-year-old. So 20 years down the line, and it's still a fun read. Not gonna lie, I enjoyed. I killed all 7 books. I know you looking at me as if I was crazy. I killed them, I think, within a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Yeah, I still don't know what the hell you were doing, bro. I was like, this guy is munching these books. I'm there like reading the first Witcher book, The Last Wish. I've read like maybe a few chapters of it, and I'm just like, alright, cool, yeah, cool. I'm not smashing this, but I'm going through it. I'm looking at this guy. He's on his phone or his tablet, and he's just going straight through these books, just like like a cat. Like he's just scanning them. I was like, what the hell type of Rain Man shit is this, man? It's like
I read quite quickly, and I said to you, and I think what contributes is if I have a frame of reference as well, because I'd watched the movies beforehand. A lot of the job of kind of imagining how things look like in the book was already done for me, and then I added extra bits on top because the books are a lot more detailed on how settings look like, as it would be. You know, you don't, unless you pause like a frame or something in a film, you're not gonna, analyze every single nook and cranny of let's say like Hogwarts Castle or something like that. You get a lot more description in the books, but like the foundation of how Hogwarts Castle, for example, looks like, I already know how it looks like from the films, but then like you add in the extras, and so that job's a bit quicker, so you have less of a need to kind of go back and read like a paragraph which is describing said thing. So yeah, that whole experience was really cool. So I mean, Philosopher's Stone is probably a good starting point. So the film does like a really good job of adapting it. It's probably the shortest book out of all of them, the first one. In case you guys are living under a rock and don't know what Harry Potter is, it's about a wizard. Well, it's about a kid. He's about 10 years old, 10, 11 years old. He's orphaned. He lives with his uncle and auntie, and they treat him like shit. He lives in a cupboard under the stairs. He has an odd lightning bolt shaped scar on his forehead, and he finds out through various means. It's a shortened version of a synopsis. Well, it's a shortened synopsis. He finds out that he's a wizard, and that his parents were murdered by a evil wizard called Lord Voldemort. and the whole kind of story and premise is him kind of getting into the wizarding world. And a lot of the first book is a setup. It's describing all the wonders. It's like putting you in the eyes of somebody who's, you know, being treated like shit, and then you get to a place where you can he's actually feeling valued. You know, he feels at home. Is not feeling valued. He feels he's found a place where he can call home, which is, he always thought it was a bit weird. Strange things happened to him, and now he's found an explanation why he's a wizard. All this magic stuff goes around him, and he goes to a school where they teach him how to learn how to do magic. It's probably one, like, if you look at it from an objective perspective, for learning purposes, this is one of the worst schools to go to. They have some of the most shit teachers known to mankind.
Ofsted would fail the shit out of this school.
Like they describe, for example, right? There's a history of magic teacher who's a ghost. Yeah, they don't show him in the films. This is in the books. He doesn't know he's dead. He's a teacher that doesn't know he's dead. He just, one day, his soul just left his body and he carried on about his day. That's him. But his lessons are bollocks. He basically drones on. He just carries on going. He pays no attention to the students. So most of the students end up failing.
Rah.
I was like, wow, yeah, fantastic. This school can also not hold on to a defense against the dark arts teacher for longer than a year. Yeah, so this is probably one of your most important subjects, which is teaching you how to defend yourself against evil magic, essentially, or, like, you know, fighting against evil monsters. And they don't have any consistent teaching for longer than a year, and all their teachers are spotty at best. And sometimes they get good ones, and a lot of the times they get bad ones.
To be fair, it's quite reflective of education in England anyway.
To be fair, that's a good point. That's not bad. That's not a bad comparison.
Maybe that's the J.K. Rowling's gonna watch this maybe 10 years down the line, and just be like, she's gonna go on Twitter and be like, actually, my books were a metaphor for the education system in the UK and how a teacher can't be held onto for longer than a year. And then others drone on, and I'm just gonna be like, yeah, sure, that's what the metaphor was.
Why is she Australian all of a sudden?
Why is she? She's South African.
South African, yeah. But yeah, like, it's really cool setup. The first book kind of shows you the tonality shift in a way. It does start off as, you know, if you're a younger person reading it, it's a lot lighter of a read, a lot simpler of a read. And then, like, you can see the, you know, how the characters evolve with age and how they get, you know, become like young adults. But obviously these guys are just like, you know, 10, 11-year-old kids. I think they're mostly 11 at this point. And you find out how nosy this fucker Harry Potter is. Like, you just found a place that you can call your own now. You would think that he would do his utmost to kind of learn all he can about magic. You know, he's found out he's special, like, you know, all this strange stuff that happens to him. Like, he's like, oh yeah, I've got a wand, I've got an owl, everything. I'm just gonna go to this school and become the best wizard possible. He's like, no. The first thing he finds out is that, oh yeah, there's this a teacher that doesn't look like he particularly likes me, yeah. And also there's this thing called the Philosopher's Stone, which I think is a potentially dangerous thing. My headmaster and the giant who took me around Diagon Alley to buy all my books and potions and stuff, they're hiding this secret thing from me. I'm so nosy, I need to figure out what this thing is and why it's hidden in the castle. And reading it back again, I was in the mentality of, if that was me, I'd be like, no, fuck that. Like, it's not my business. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And they put themselves in so many positions to get themselves killed as well, like, you know, with the trolls and all that.
Yeah, someone needs to make, like, what would have really happened in Harry Potter.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It was a bit unrealistic. Yeah. It was a little bit unrealistic from that aspect. You were kind of like, I don't know, man. Like, this guy seems like a nosy fuck to me.
And he would have been dead. His friends would have been dead.
Yeah, he literally got himself in, well, him and his friends in positions where you were just like, man, I don't know what y'all doing, but y'all just trying to get yourself killed. Yeah, like, and they are like more so, I think, in the films, they're dumbasses. When it comes to magic, they don't show how much magic they learn throughout the kind of years, and like, you know, you go from like the first to the sixth book, I'd say. Sorry, first to the sixth movie, and you're kind of like, wow, it seems like you've only learned a bit more magic. In the books, they've had more time to develop, and you kind of go to the classes with them, and you see what spells and stuff they're learning. Not so much in the book, in the films. But yeah.
Yeah, I think you get a little bit in the films, but yeah. So the first movie was just basically focusing on Harry, the Philosopher's Stone, and the mystery behind it. Harry's introduction to the wizarding world, him being told, "You're a wizard, Harry," and
Yeah.
about how his parents kind of really died. But yeah, mostly around the Philosopher's Stone, being introduced to the concept of Voldemort, and kind of it was the start of their then like decades long, well, not decades, but actually it probably has been 20 years, so decades long rivalry / beef. Well, actually most of the beef was from Voldemort because he's a weirdo. For those of you who don't know, that's all the explanation you're gonna get. Voldemort is a weirdo. He likes killing children. So Harry Potter is next on the list.
I suppose that in this part of the, when you read the first book and you watch the first movie, that is pretty much what you know. You don't know why Voldemort tried to kill. So like, you know, if you don't know, he murdered Harry's parents to get to Harry, to get an opportunity to kill Harry. For some reason, he was trying to kill Harry as a child. But what you learn at the end of the first movie is that if your mom or dad or whatever, in this case it was his mom, if they die protecting you, this is not explained like, you know, in absolute detail, but you, as a child, I'm not sure if it's as a child or if it's as a person, you're left with protection. So as a child, he was left with protection when his mom got murdered by Voldemort, and then when Voldemort attempted to kill Harry, the spell backfired. So the spell backfired, and it ended up killing Voldemort. But instead of, you know, being dead, he was left without a body, and he was kind of like a spirit, a soul, just wandering around, trying to find out how to be revived again. And so the Philosopher's Stone was his ticket, he thought, to because the Philosopher's Stone has properties to make you immortal. So his theory was that he was gonna get the Philosopher's Stone and use that as a way to come back fully alive again. But those plans got thwarted by an 11-year-old child who doesn't know any magic.
Yes, he just ran up to Professor Quill and like touched up his face, and he's like, it's like, oh my god, this is like, that's exactly what would happen in COVID. You go to someone, you touch them, they're like, and they just start melting.
Yeah. And it's one of those, I actually searched it up after watching the first book. I typed in Philosopher's Stone, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay.
Do you know where I'm going with this? You look confused? It's the old Raiders of the Lost Ark one. Remember where, I mean, we came across this when we were probably watching Big Bang Theory, where they point out that the fact that the plot of Raiders of the Lost Ark was not influenced in any way, shape, or form by Indiana Jones.
Oh yeah.
As in, like, if he didn't get involved with trying to stop the guys getting the Ark, the same shit would have happened.
Yeah, they still would have opened the Ark, and everyone would have melted like they did.
So the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark is they're finding the Ark of the Covenant, right? And I think it was German guys. Like I think it was based in like Nazi times.
Yeah. Every film where there's like meant to be. Actually, I think Indiana Jones is American, right? But,
yeah, he is. Yeah.
But every film where it's like, there's always going to be some sort of, if there's an upstanding moral character, which Indiana Jones isn't really, I don't think. but there's always going to be some like German opposing factor, even though it's like, bro, the war and now we've had a few years in between. It's always a German guy, and then
Or a Russian. It's always a German or Russian in an American film.
There are three types of villains. You're either gonna get the German, you're gonna get the Russian, or you're gonna get the Brit.
The Brit
will always be the composed kind of, no, Mr. Bond, you've underestimated my powers, kind of thing. And then you'll get the Russian will always just be some like really. Actually, the Russian will be a bit similar to the Brit, where they'll be like super composed. They'll have all these assets available to them. Mr. Bond, I think you've forgotten my abilities. Actually, that's I don't know where that was. That was maybe Dracula. But
Transylvania, straight out Transylvania.
Yeah, the Russian will just be like, "Hey, this is number one bullshit." Yeah. But then you get the Germans. The Germans are always just basically they seem to have a variety of them. There'll be one main German dude who you'll know the name of, and then this German will always just have forces on forces to rely upon. And I think it was the same with actually Raiders of the Lost Ark, because there was that one main German dude who just had bare mans he had like at his disposal.
Yeah, so they were trying to access the power of the Ark of the Covenant, and to spoiler, I suppose, for a film that's been out for like 40-50 years at this point, they fail. Indiana Jones fails to get the Ark of the Covenant away from the Nazis, the German guys, and they open it up, and the Ark of the Covenant, the power inside of it is too overwhelming, and it kills them all. So essentially, Indiana Jones had, even if he wasn't there, if he had made no attempt to get the Ark of the Covenant back, the same shit would have happened to them.
Yeah.
So, and then I had that light bulb go off in Philosopher's Stone. And I was like, wow, about if Harry didn't get involved? If Harry didn't get involved in the Philosopher's Stone, in terms of the plans to thwart Voldemort from getting the Philosopher's Stone, in my opinion, it wouldn't have had any impact, because what happened was Professor Quirrell, who's the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, he was actually he had Voldemort's soul. It was like a parasite on his body, and he was trying to get into this. They had like all these rooms, these with spells on from different teachers in the castle. Who, when you look back, you're like, man, your spells are really shit. Like 3 or 11-year-olds managed to get through them. And you're trying to keep this thing, which is like really quite dangerous, in a way, depending on who gets a hold of it. And 3 11-year-olds managed to get through it. I mean, obviously that's kind of like in hindsight, but so he manages to get through. Sorry?
Well, it turns out one of them was a prodigy in chess, which by the way, that never plays a part in the story going forward ever again. The fact that Ron was an absolute beast at chess, and he was like, knight to e5, and then they're like, oh yeah, that's really cool. Nothing ever again. They don't even mention his ability to play chess. It's just he did it that one time.
In the books,
that's all he gets.
In the books, they do, but it's more of a case of like, like I said, like one of the most enjoyable things about the books is the downtime between the actual plot, and you get to see them like chilling out during Christmas and the Easter holidays, or like after they've done their exams, or like the times in the common rooms. So that's what the book I think is really, really good at. Like that's enjoyable. It's not like fluff. That bit of the book is probably more enjoyable, or as enjoyable as the plot itself. But they play chess during Christmas, and they always talk about how Ron like beats the shit out of Harry in it. And I was, so Quirrell goes through all these obstacles, and he gets to the final obstacle, which is this mirror called the Mirror of Erised. And what that does is it shows you your deepest desire, what you really want. And Dumbledore put a spell on this, put like an extra kind of spell onto the mirror, which said, you get the Philosopher's Stone from the mirror of Erised only if you really desire it, but you don't desire it to use it for your own personal gain.
Yeah. That was in the movie as well.
So in other words, Quirrell was standing in front of this mirror and was like, "Shit, I'm looking at this mirror and nothing's happening." He would have been stuck there with what all happened Yeah, he wouldn't have got the stone. But because Harry and his mates interfered, they got all the way to the end, followed this guy. They thought it was their potions teacher who's being an asshole to them. And Snape is far more of an asshole in the books than the movies. Like he's like proper like evil against the kids, especially Harry.
Yeah.
But so they go all the way through expecting to see Professor Snape there, the potions teacher, and it was Professor Quirrell instead. And he was like, "Oh shit, I didn't expect you here." And then Quirrell makes him go in front of the mirror, and the Philosopher's Stone appears in Harry's pocket. Because he wants to get it, but not to use. He wants to get it to keep away. So I was like, well, dude, if you weren't there, nothing would have happened. Essentially, what would have happened is Quirrell would have been stuck there, and Dumbledore was on his way anyway, and he clocked on that it was Quirrell.
All right. So it's not really similar to Raiders of the Lost Ark in the sense of Harry's interference did change the story. So if Harry hadn't been involved, or had he been involved, there's two separate things that happened. So one was he actually got the Philosopher's Stone. So it's different to Raiders of the Lost Ark. Raiders of the Lost Ark was if you took Indiana Jones out of the movie, the same thing would have occurred.
Yeah.
But if you took Harry out of the movie, the same thing wouldn't have occurred.
Not the exact same thing, but what I'm saying is it would have been the same result as in Voldemort still wouldn't have got the Philosopher's Stone, except Quirrell probably wouldn't have died. He probably would have been sent to Azkaban, and then Voldemort would have been forced to leave his body.
Yeah. But you'd think that, like, come on, guys, like, you're in a school full of hundreds and hundreds of children, all different age ranges. None of y'all put stipulations into your spells where it's like, oh yeah, and if anybody within the ages of 11 to 17 or 11 to 16 happens to get here, somehow they just spawn in the middle of the room, they can't access any of this shit. They can't get the Philosopher's Stone or anything like that. Like, my guy had his spell on the mirror, Dumbledore, specific enough to say someone can get the Philosopher's Stone only if he had an if condition in there while he was coding.
While he was coding it.
Yeah, which was only if the person isn't going to use it for themselves, for their own personal gain. And he couldn't put an age restriction on that. Like,
well, to be fair, that far along into the thingy, they weren't going to expect any kids to get to that point because of all the obstacles. Yeah. Even though the obstacles, when you think about it, were a three-headed dog where you can get past them by playing music. Yeah. A plant that tries to kill you unless you stop moving.
Yeah.
A bunch of keys. A bunch of keys. This one was probably the hardest one, and they got lucky on it, which was just a bunch of keys in the air, and they have to get on broomsticks to catch a particular key in order to open the next door.
And the keys harass you, man, big time.
Yeah. And they got lucky because the key in question was already captured by Quirrell. So the wings were bent.
Oh, actually, I didn't notice that. That's a good point.
Yeah, so that's like they were looking up, and obviously because Harry's he's a good Quidditch player. He's a seeker. He spotted that one of the keys was larger than the others, and the wings were bent.
All right, eagle eyes, bro.
Yeah. I think Ron must have spotted it. He, like initially, he's just like, oh yeah, like that's what we're kind of looking for, like a key that's bent and rusted and all that. Yeah, I think there was another challenge. Yeah, there was a challenge that they missed in the film. An obstacle, which was they had a room. So in the film, they played the chess match, and then straight after the chess match, he goes into the room where there's the Mirror of Erised. In the books, there's actually a room which he goes with Hermione because Ron's injured after playing the chess match. And they have like 3 potions. They have to have like 1 or 3 potions. And they missed that out, and I'm glad they did. It was just a waste of time in the books. It was essentially 1 potion lets you go home, 1 potion lets you go forward, and 1 potion is poison.
Okay.
And through the riddle, like Hermione works it out, but in the books, it was just like, wow, that was a little bit of a crap challenge, wasn't it? in the films, I think they did it right. They left Hermione with Ron instead of going to a room and then coming back to Ron.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, fairly short in the book as well. And you were kind of like, that wasn't that effective. That was just to have it for no reason. But yeah, so I mean, that's Philosopher's Stone. Really good setup. You find out how nosy Harry is, and how he how he intentionally tries to get his friends involved into shit that he wants to get dealt with. But what you also learn is that his hunches are usually quite correct in terms of, you know, if there's some crap going down, some problems going down, it's he's probably right, which is important for later on, because in like books like 6 onwards, right, 6 and 7, anytime he has a hunch, they're like, I don't know, man, maybe you're just making things up, and he's just looking at them like,
have you not read the last 5 books?
yeah,
Have y'all not read this shit yet?
exactly. Like all the way throughout the 6th book, for example, right, Malfoy, which is like his enemy at school, is a kid same age as him, who's always, you know, he's brought up by like dark wizard parents, like, you know, who are faking being dark wizards. He's doing something, he's seen him doing something and all that, and all the way throughout the book and the film for that matter, they're saying that, you know what, you're just biased against him. Like they wouldn't make a 16-year-old you know, Death Eater, you know, a follower of Voldemort. He was right, he was spot on. Malfoy had been getting up to shit throughout the whole book, and they just ignored him. Like the teachers, his mates, everything. And then like literally, I would, if it was me and I'm petty, at the end of the book, you know, when you know, certain individuals pass away, I would have been roasting, man, the whole I would have dedicated a whole chapter of me just roasting everybody who didn't listen. It's like, oh yeah, remember that? You know, maybe this guy could have got saved if it wasn't because of your ass ignoring me, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Harry just pulls out, like, he opens up his blazer,
Receipts.
pulls out a receipt, and he's like, you at this time, slaps him, and he's like, he's just going all the way through, slapping all these wastemans. And that's actually something else, which is from the first book all the way through to the last, one of the main kind of themes for me of Harry Potter was the incompetence of adults all the way through.
Yeah.
The Dumbledore was like he was like, yeah, Harry got this, bro. He's the chosen one. I'm gonna sit back and watch him get clapped by all this stuff. All the teachers are just kind of like complete waste, man. It's like, bro, actually listen to the kid who's saying, yo, shit's going down, and help the guy. Instead, they'll just be like, nah, cuz we're good. And then people are just dying all around them or getting petrified like in the next book. And you're just like, come on, man. How is there a basilisk just rolling around, chilling, petrifying Mandem, and you ain't done nothing about it yet?
Well, at the very least, how prove him wrong? Like, if you don't quite believe him. But they were just like, nope, nothing's happening. I said this to you after I finished reading the 7th book. What became very clear was how shit everybody else was at using magic. It was like they learnt enough magic, the rest of them. I'm talking about all the other characters in the books, even the ones that are working at the Ministry of Magic and stuff like that. How they seem to know enough magic to do like household chores, but that's about it.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point as well, because like, and this is something whenever you're writing a story, which I feel is key. You can't make it unrealistic enough to the point where it's like, oh yeah, the main character is talented.
It is kind of realistic though when you think about it, because a lot of the magic that Harry and them use is like, you know, defense against like dark arts and that. And you gotta remember, at this point they've been free of a dark wizard for about 16, 17 years. Yeah. So
that's like,
so that's a whole generation, really, right? That didn't really need to learn how to protect themselves from dark arts.
It can't have been 16, 17 years, because Harry was only like, when Voldemort lost his body to when Harry went to Hogwarts, that was only about like 10 years.
No. Well, yeah. So he was 1 year old when Lord Voldemort tried to kill him and Voldemort died. Yeah. But then they didn't believe that Voldemort was alive until the end of Order of the Phoenix, and he was 15. So yeah, you're right, not 16 years, about 14 years. But that's still like a whole, you know, generation. That's 2 full classes, you know, there's 7 years in Hogwarts. That's about 2 full classes worth. two
Yeah,
cohorts
but
worth of people that didn't have to deal with defending themselves from a dark wizard.
yeah, but it shouldn't be enough for the rest of the adult population to have gone from a state of knowing how to defend themselves or being aware of spells they can use to then basically they've gone from being slightly prepared or even very prepared to but we can only do household chores now where like our cups clean themselves or some shit. I'm like, that wouldn't happen so quickly.
Yeah, they actually kind of exposed themselves because I think it was in the 7th book, right? They were talking about how Fred. So, Harry has two friends, Hermione Granger, who's a Muggle, which is a non-wizarding, so just a normal person. They're not descendants of like wizards or witches. So she's 100% Muggle, and she has magic powers. Harry is a half-blood. His mom was a Muggle, and his dad's a pure-blood wizard. So he's descended from pure-blood wizards. And then Ron, his other friend. So there's three of them. His mom and dad are both pure-blood wizards. Now Ron has two brothers called Fred and George, and they towards the end of the series they make their own joke shop where they make sweets and stuff like that help you skive off school. But what they do, I think, in the sound book is they start creating these actual practical things, and one of the things that they created was these hats which cast a shield charm on you. And and what they said in the books was that the Ministry of Magic was contacting them to buy like boxes and boxes of these hats, because even people who were working in the Ministry of Magic, some of them couldn't do shield charms. And that's when you were just like, okay, you really realize how shit they are, because that is like your most basic of basics. Like, if you're trying to protect yourself, you want to learn a shield charm. And they were saying that a lot of the guys in Ministry of Magic couldn't do that. Like, Ministry of Magic being the people who, the government, essentially, the people who are trying to protect everybody else. So,
and this is going to come out like years later as another J.K. Rowling saying, oh yeah, but it's a metaphor of what's actually occurring in government because they're also incompetent. And I'd be like, well, that's also kind of true.
True. She should have had a chapter dedicated to how the Ministry of Magic have parties during Christmas when telling everybody else not to have them.
Yeah, and they have birthday cakes and they just mentioned that too.
Yeah. But yeah, I suppose that moves us on to the second film / book. So Chamber of Secrets. This is where you really find out how stupid people are. So the Chamber of Secrets is about at the beginning of the film, like, so Harry's finished his first year at Hogwarts. He's been sent back to his auntie and his uncle, and all of a sudden he's still being treated like shit. I think at this point in the film, at this point in the book, sorry, he's been actually given a room to sleep in now, rather than a cupboard under the stairs. I can't remember whether it was the second or third book, but I'm pretty sure it was the second one. But he's still being treated like shit and stuff like that. There's a house elf that comes and warns Harry not to go back to Hogwarts and that there's danger that's happening. And in order to do that, he tries to get him in trouble by using magic. And wizards and witches aren't allowed to use magic in the presence of muggles, especially if they're underage. So there's a rule that you can't use it in front of muggles because they're living separately from non-magic people. And they don't want it to be exposed to the world, because it could be dangerous. But the other rule is if you're underage, if you're under the age of 16, you can't use magic. And obviously Harry falls into both those brackets. And the Ministry of Magic is so stupid, right? You just have to be in the vicinity of somebody using magic and they'll blame you for it as an underage wizard.
Yeah.
So Dobby used magic to get him in trouble with his... Dobby the household gets him in trouble with his auntie and uncle by using magic, and he gets sent a warning saying that there was a charm that was done in your house, so it must have been you.
Yeah.
What a bunch of crap.
Yeah, but it depends. Was it done with his wand or was it just done by Dobby?
It's just about house elves have their own magic. They don't need to use wands. They're actually undercover, probably one of the most powerful beings in the Harry Potter universe, because they can use magic that no one else can use, and it doesn't seem that anybody in the wizarding world knows, like the ones that are wizards and witches, knows how to counter them. So, for example, you can't teleport yourself, so it's called disapparate. You can't. No, it's not called. It's called apparate. Sorry, but you can't apparate into Hogwarts from outside. House elves can do that.
Damn.
They have their own version of apparate. I don't think it's called apparating, but it's their own version of it, using their own like house elf magic. They can do that. But anyway, he gets in trouble. His auntie and uncle lock him up in his room, and they were like, "Yeah, you ain't going back to that school. You're an ob. Basically, you did all this stuff with magic." And Ron comes with his brothers Fred and George in a flying car to break him out. So they break him out, and then and they go to their house, and it's been established at this point that they're a very poor family, Ron's family, and you kind of get to see.
Did they not get a warning for flying in a flying car in the middle of some privet drive somewhere in the middle of England, smashing this guy's window open, ripping the bars off it? Did they not get in trouble for that? No warning for that, but Harry got in trouble for a house elf casting a charm.
Yeah, because they're not using magic. It's that the magic has already been placed on the car, if you know what I mean. So they're not actually doing like a spell or anything.
Yeah, no, but it's still showing magic.
Yeah. Well, they didn't show it to anybody, you remember? Until
but it's like you got a car flying in the sky. Someone's not seen it.
Well, that's the thing. Like I say, the whole check from the Ministry of Magic is if you're using magic, like with your wand. But obviously, apparently it's it's all strange.
So you can enchant like a Glock and just go outside and start busting all these muggles, and the ministry would be like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. He didn't cast the magic then and there, so we're all good."
Yeah. And to give this one hopefully a shorter synopsis than Philosopher's Stone, is to go back to school. Weird shit's happening to get like Harry injured and stuff. He finds out it's the house elf. All the house elf is trying to do is trying to save Harry by sending him back home, because there's something that's supposed to be going down. And what they find out is that there's this secret chamber in Hogwarts called the Chamber of Secrets, which one of the 4 original founders of Hogwarts, Slytherin. So you have 4 houses. You have Hufflepuff, where the slightly let's just say slightly weird people tend to join that. I'm gonna get so you got the Gryffindor, which used to take brave people, so he'd take brave witches and wizards into his house. So the people in your house are the people that you end up spending time with there. It's in your dormitories. It's a kind of boarding school. Well, Hogwarts is a boarding school. It's not kind of a boarding school. It's a school where you sleep in and stay in as well. You got Slytherin, who take only the most cunning and intelligent wizards, but also the fact that they're purebloods as well. That's the most important thing. The founder felt that only pureblood wizards and witches should have the opportunity to learn. Ravenclaw only sought out wizards and witches that were smart and intelligent. I think Slytherin less so intelligent, is more cunning. And then Hufflepuff essentially took everybody else. That was actually the motto. When you actually see what people they take in, Hufflepuff was, "I'll take everybody else."
For real? Wow.
Yeah, legit is.
Cool. I'll take it. I'll take everybody else that you guys don't think are worthy, and then make them 6 wizards.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's also, oh yeah, we'll just take everyone else. Yeah, whatever. And you just like,
yeah. So they're not brave. They're not. It doesn't mean that they aren't, but and then you find out that kind of getting placed in his house is kind of pointless in a way. It doesn't actually, make up your personality in these. But yeah, Slytherin left a chamber which had an evil monster in there, a basilisk. And this monster has been awakened, and it's killing students, or it's attempting to kill students.
Did they ever clarify why Slytherin left behind a basilisk just chilling in the layers of Hogwarts?
He has revenge. So they basically ousted him. So
Slytherin actually evil then? Salazar Slytherin.
he wasn't evil. He didn't get his way. So they formed the school, and for a few years, it was all harmony between the houses. But he started becoming more of the mind that only purebloods and should have the privilege of learning in Hogwarts. So they got into an argument, and I think eventually the argument got to the point where they said to Slytherin to leave, or it was either they told him to leave Hogwarts, or they it was a mutual decision. He decided to leave, but he was just like, as revenge, I'm going to kind of leave this monster here, and if one of my descendants comes here, I mean, the important fact here being Slytherin had the rare ability to talk to snakes. It's called Parseltongue. So the monster was a snake. It's a basilisk, which is like this massive ass snake. So he was like, if my descendant comes here, then you guys are going to rue the day that you kicked me out of the school, kind of thing. At least that's the vibe I got. So yeah, so what they find out is that the Chamber of Secrets was opened once before, like about 50 years before Harry and them were in school. And Hagrid, the half giant, was blamed for it, even though he had nothing to do with it. They find out because they were all still trying to figure out what this monster is, and they find out more towards the end that it's a basilisk. But then Harry finds out he's also got the ability to speak Parseltongue as well. So yeah, the movie is about how the school's in danger throughout. It's a lot darker of a movie than and a book than the first one, because people are genuinely in mortal danger throughout the whole story, and it's only through kind of luck in a way that nobody actually dies, because they get petrified instead. So this basilisk, one of the powers it has is when it looks at you, you get killed. But a lot of the people who got who looked into the who were victims of this basilisk, let's say, they didn't actually end up dying. They ended up getting petrified, which is they're frozen. And the reason for that is they didn't look at it directly. It was either through a reflection or masked. One of the guys who got petrified, he looked at the basilisk through a ghost.
So, he's the luckiest lot, man.
Oh man!
So he was like, "Oh, petrification, bro." Like, see, that's the thing. If I was in that situation, I would probably hear something and then turn around and look it dead in the eyes, and that was game over, man. So lucky these guys are like blind, deaf, dumb.
Yeah, so something is controlling it, and what you find out, to make a long story short, is that there's this book. It's the diary, and you find out it's somebody called Tom Riddle, and you're like, okay, who's that? So it's Tom Riddle's diary, and he's been taking control of Ron's little sister who just started Hogwarts that year. And he's been, taking control of her and doing all these Chamber of Secrets activities, like opening it up, like leaving messages and stuff like that. And what you find out is it actually has a part of Lord Voldemort in it. So it was so Tom Riddle is Voldemort. That was his real name before he gave himself the name Voldemort. So his real name is Tom Marvolo Riddle. And if you jumble up the letters, and I thought this was pretty cool. I don't know how she did this, but if you jumble up the letters, you can make the I am Voldemort, I am Lord Voldemort out of those same letters. Yeah, I don't really know how she did that, but I thought that was pretty cool. And
probably had Lord Voldemort or I am Lord Voldemort, and she tried to make a name out of that, and she was like, okay,
yeah,
this works.
Maybe she had like Tom Riddle, and then she was like, let's see what we can do with the middle name. And
yeah, because like Tom Riddle, that's pretty basic, and then Marvolo, you're just like, yeah, you needed that to make the other.
So essentially, once again, Voldemort tries to kill Harry and fails, and you're like, at this point, when you're reading it as a 29-year-old, like, how shit is this like Voldemort guy? Like, he's meant to be the most evilest, most powerful like dark wizard in the world. And the guy's been sorted twice by like a 11, 12-year-old at this point, right? And the 12-year-old is not really ready. He's like, he knows, basic magic at this point, but he's not he's not ready to kind of take on an evil Dark Lord, you know, kind of thing. And he thought it twice by him.
You had a giant snake on your side, which had Medusa eyes, bro.
Yeah.
It was turning people to stone, and this was even more powerful than Medusa, because if you got a direct glance, it was game over. You're done.
Yeah.
So giant snake and shit couldn't do anything. I'm just like, bro, come on, man. Like, you're sucking booty in these first two movies so far.
Yeah. To be fair, the snake almost killed him, but the one cure, apparently, I didn't know it was the one cure until later on.
Phoenix.
It's Phoenix Tears, and Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts, he owns a phoenix, so he cries on Harry a little bit, heals him up, he's all good. But I think this book was there to establish the main part, which is there's some very odd things with Harry, which make him very similar to Voldemort. So he sees, like in Tom Riddle's diary, Tom Riddle takes him to, he shows him like memories and stuff, and Harry kind of gets into it because he's like, oh, this guy seems similar to me, like, you know, he's like an orphan. Tom Riddle's an orphan, and he kind of seemed that way, and he seems to like Hogwarts as much, and that is true. Like, one of Voldemort's favorite places in the world was Hogwarts, because that's where he found. What you find out later is that he was half-blood. He was an orphan, and that he was in an orphanage for years, and then he eventually found out that he was a wizard, and that was like the best news in the world to him. So very similar to Harry. But then he could also speak to snakes. What you find out is obviously Tom Riddle can speak Parseltongue. He's an heir of Slytherin. And Harry does as well, but he's not an heir of Slytherin. But what you find out is that Voldemort kind of transferred some of his powers to Harry on the day that he's trying to kill him. So, yeah, I mean, that was the main importance of the book. The next one is Prisoner of Azkaban. So what do you want to know about that one? So what do you remember about it, so you can explain the plot of this one?
This one's going to be interesting. So,
because you don't remember much of this one, right?
Nah, all I remember Prisoner of Azkaban was there's a lot of news going around about this this kind of, I think it's a muggle murderer called Sirius Black, and I've forgotten why he had, or in the news he had some sort of affiliation with Harry Potter. Maybe they were accusing him of being responsible for killing Harry Potter's parents, I think.
Yeah, indirectly, yes.
Yeah. It was something like tipping off Voldemort about their location or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's kind of one of the main storylines, which is they've caught this prisoner. Actually, no, is it in this that they caught him? Yeah, I think it's in this that they said they caught him. And he's chilling in Azkaban, which is a prison in the wizarding world. But the kind of twist here is the guards of Azkaban, the people who are keeping the people in prison, they're called Dementors. And these Dementors are exactly, their name like is exactly what they are. They go in and they're demented individuals. They dement other people, and they suck the positive emotions out of them, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's right.
So you got basically a whole bunch of clinically depressed individuals in prison because you've got these creatures which are sucking the positive emotion out of them. So it's like, okay, cool, that's dark, but I can't remember what the actual involvement from Voldemort was in this, because we see in this movie 3 of Harry's parents' friends, I think, for the first time. So we see Sirius Black, who it turns out was actually his dad's best friend, Harry Potter's dad's best friend. We see Remus Lupin, who is one of Harry's dad's best friends again. And then we have Peter Pettigrew, who is also one of his dad's best friends. Turns out Peter Pettigrew is actually the one who was the betrayer, the traitor. But he's been thought long dead. Turns out he's not. Ron has a rat called Scabbers. Turns out Pettigrew was that rat. He just kind of transformed into it. They all have their own different transformations. I forgot what it's called. It's like when you're an animagus or something.
Yeah. That's right.
So Sirius Black has the coolest one. Well, actually, no, he doesn't have the coolest one, but it is sick. He can transform into a dog. A black dog. I think a big black dog.
I'm gonna stop you here. Just to give a bit of backdrop in the film. So when this film came out, I didn't like it that much. I've grown to like it a lot more as we've gotten older. When I was a kid, I watched it, I think, after reading the book, and I thought it did a poor job of explaining the plot, and in some respects that's still the case. So what they didn't really establish is, so it all starts off with Remus Lupin. So Professor Lupin, he's been hired as the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher at Hogwarts. He was James Potter's friend, so Harry's dad, and he had a group of 4 friends, like you mentioned, and all 4 of them can transform into animals. So the backdrop to this being that you have wizards which are called animagus, and they have the ability to transform into animals, but they have to legally be registered by the Ministry of Magic as being animaguses. These guys were kids; they didn't register. They were a bit of they were rule breakers, even at school, and they said, "Now we're not going to do that." The reason why they became animagus wizards was because they found out that their friend Lupin was a werewolf. So Lupin isn't an animagus; he's a werewolf. He's been one since he was a kid. He was attacked by a werewolf and he transforms at the moon. And what they wanted to do was to kind of protect him and to kind of, chill with him and help him with his transformations. They would become animagus wizards. They would become animagus. They would become animals. So you'd have James Potter would become a stag. Peter Pettigrew would become a rat, and Sirius Black would become a dog, a big black dog. And what they would do is there was like a tree planted in Hogwarts around this time, which would just smack around people. It's called the Whomping Willow. And it's actually in the Chamber of Secrets, like when they fly into Hogwarts, they get smacked around by the Whomping Willow. And what that actually was, that was planted, and this wasn't established in the films, that was planted for Lupin. It was because it has an entrance which takes you to a place which is a bit more isolated called the Shrieking Shack. And so what Lupin would do was there was a place on the tree, the Whomping Willow, where he'd press it and it'd freeze, and then you could go into the tree, and it would take you on a path to take you to this Shrieking Shack. I keep calling it Shrek.
Shrieking Shack.
Yeah. So what they would do is they found out that their friend could turn into a wolf. They found out how to transform into these animals. They would Peter Pettigrew he was quite important because he was so small. He would go all the way and touch that particular place without being noticed by the Whomping Willow, and the tree would freeze, and it would make life easier for them. And then they would go into the Shrieking Shack and then play around as animals and stuff like that, and do cool stuff, and just to keep everybody else away. So that's kind of like the backdrop. Is not overly important, but it kind of gives you a bit more insight into the relationship between the friends, which they didn't really do a good job in the film. And The Prisoner of Azkaban is about the story is Sirius Black. He is accused of killing all these Muggles and killing Peter Pettigrew, which was one of his mates, and also giving up the location to Voldemort, to James and Lily Potter, Harry's parents. So he betrayed them. So he's been accused of betraying his friends and also killing one of his other ones. But to make a long story short, it turns out it wasn't him, and it was actually Peter Pettigrew who faked his own death when Sirius approached him, and the people around him, I think they must have had memory charms and all that. And I was saying this to you is a bit stupid because I was like, not one of the people around Sirius thought, maybe this guy, he just got blown to smithereens. Really, that's it. That they didn't do any investigation really to find out whether Peter Pettigrew is dead. And for some reason, Peter Pettigrew thought that the best place to stay hidden was as a pet for Ron Weasley.
Yeah.
For what, 13 years?
Yeah, I mean, no one else would consider that. But then it's like, what I was thinking was, my guy was just for 13 years, he was just yeah, safe. I'll just be a rat. Bro, why didn't you just go to the Muggle world and live a normal life?
Exactly. Or plan your or go away hidden like you did after that.
Yeah. And
just stay hidden. Why did you have to stay as a pet? It's just all very strange.
Weird.
Yeah, because Like, I think
13.
the reasoning that they had was like, oh, so you can keep track of Harry Potter, and you just like no, because for about 10 or 11 of those years, Ron Weasley had nothing to do with Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Like they didn't know each other, so like you can't really say that. But so like that part of it didn't make any sense. But essentially, what you learn there's not much involvement in the way for Harry Potter. This book is more of a setup for the fourth book. So you find out, these people exist, and that these people were betrayed. And Harry finds out he's got a godfather. At the end of the book, they fail to free Sirius Black. They fail to prove him innocent to the Ministry of Magic, who once again are incapable as hell, which is quite a accurate reflection. But they managed to free Sirius Black and a hippogriff, so an animal, which isn't really important to the plot. But they managed. The only thing that's important about it is that they get Sirius to escape on the hippogriff. But like it's like a lot of backstory, a lot of the third book spends a lot of time just explaining like relationships and stuff, and also you actually finally get to see Harry with a good Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, and also Harry's experience with Dementors, which is quite important because he doesn't really feel fear until he sees these Dementors, which also, as a side product from as a byproduct from what you're saying, they also make you relive your worst memories.
Oh yeah.
And he has latent memories of when he was a kid and he saw his mom getting murdered. So he relives that every time he comes across a Dementor. But through Lupin, Professor Lupin, he learns how to do an advanced bit of magic called a Patronus, which he ends up using many times afterwards to scare away these Dementors.
And which takes the form of a stag.
Yeah, takes form of stag, yeah.
Funnily enough, his dad's Animagus form.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, once again, you get to see how evil Snape is, more so than in the books, because he has a grudge against all four, against Harry's dad in particular, and against his three friends. So he tries to get Lupin in trouble, and he deliberately exposes that he's a werewolf and stuff like that. But you get to see more of that, and you get more of a dislike for Snape throughout this book, I feel. Yeah, is there anything else to say about Prisoner of Azkaban, the book?
No, I think just one of the things we missed out on was that it dealt with time travel as well, which is where the movie was like... I think it did an okay job of showing it, but whenever something deals in time travel, it always gets a bit funky. So that's why Prisoner of Azkaban was kind of like one of the weaker ones for me, because like as soon as time travel comes in, it gets messy.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that as well, if I'm honest. The time turner stuff are really confusing. But I suppose that's where Goblet of Fire comes in. We're going to have to blast through these next 3 or 4 books.
It should be pretty quick.
But yeah,
Goblet of Fire.
Goblet of Fire, to make a long story short, is not a book like the others. It's quite different from the other Harry Potter books in terms of the first 3 deal up with the main setup. You get to see Harry playing Quidditch. You get to see their normal school lives. But the 4th book is a departure because they're doing a tournament inside the school called the Triwizard Tournament. Now, this Triwizard Tournament means that there's 2 other schools that are involved, and you find out, oh wow, okay, so Hogwarts isn't the only magic school going. No, there's quite a few others, and 2 of them which they have a decent relationship are a school called Durmstrang and a school called Beauxbatons. One's a boys' school, one's an all-girls school. They come and stay at Hogwarts, and stuff like Quidditch is cancelled. I think they share lessons and stuff like that at Hogwarts. But the main kind of the main mechanic, the main plot point is that there's this tournament which is going on, which is going to test 3 students, one from each school. All these magical, they're going to give them these 3 big wizarding challenges, and whoever wins gets to call themselves a Triwizard champion, and they get money, they get like a cup. And to condense a 600 odd page, 500 odd page book into 5 minutes, 3 Triwizard champions get chosen, and the limit that they put on is that that there's an age limit, so you have to be, I think, above the age of 15 or 16 to do it. And Harry at this age he's like 14. Yeah, he's 14. 12, 13, yeah. And he somehow gets chosen as a 4th champion. So somebody's put some dark magic on the Goblet of Fire, which is the thing that chooses these students. So that there's, you know, a 15, 16-year-old from Beauxbatons, from Durmstrang, and from Hogwarts, and then it's been fooled by dark magic to pick Harry. And as the 4th champion.
This is what always confused me, like, just as a side note very quickly. Why couldn't they just dismiss it? It's like, if a name popped out of that giant chalice thing, which is dealing out the names for the competitors, they were just like, no, he has to compete now. I'm like, no, he don't. You've got 3 champions.
He did have to complete.
Why?
It was a binding contract with the Goblet of Fire. They didn't explain what would happen if they didn't do it, but they were saying that the contract was binding and that he had to do it. Because they were saying, why can't we just cancel it? And they were saying, well, he has to take part in the. He can either, like, you know, you can just go into the challenge and say, I'm a forfeit, and, like, you know, throw red sparks up, because they can forfeit the challenges. But they were saying, as far as they're concerned, he has to at least show up. But he decided, you know what, I'm going to give it my best go.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Okay, so
he could have just given up if he wanted to. Remember, they were always saying, like, you know, if you're having difficulty or you can't do it, just throw up red sparks and you forfeit.
Yeah, but still, though, like, they should have kind of first challenge, or like as soon as the tournament officially started, because I'm not sure if it officially started on the first challenge or if it officially started as soon as his name came out. But it should have just been, all right, just surround Harry, tell him to forfeit, because the obvious thing here is someone wants Harry to compete that they don't know, and they don't know who that person is. He's influenced the Goblet of Fire some way, shape, or form. Maybe using dark magic. We can't let Harry compete because somebody obviously wants him there. So instead of this is where I feel like the adults in the room really should have done something, which is, instead of saying, oh yeah, if you get in trouble, just throw red sparks, they should have been like, nah, cuz you're not competing. As soon as the tournament starts, you're forfeiting, and that's it. There's no wiggle room. So that's the other thing where I'm just like, yeah, I don't really see this happening.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like, it's a bit strange. I probably can understand why they wouldn't do that. Like, they, you know, just say, you know what, give it a shot. But at the same time, like you say, they know there's something fishy going on. The only reason they haven't done anything about it is because their logic is that, you know what, maybe it would be easier to catch the person who's trying to do this to Harry if we let things go as they are. And that makes sense to make him as bait. But like you say, the kind of main consistent thing as an adult reading this is you realize how shit the other teachers are, and like Dumbledore in particular, and that I know he's very much beloved in the Harry Potter universe. He's fucking useless. He's absolutely useless throughout the whole series. Like, he doesn't do a good enough job of protecting Harry from himself at sometimes. He doesn't. So like the first book, he gets there late. Harry. The only reason Harry is still alive is because he's got his protection of his mom. The second book, they were basically on the verge of kicking Dumbledore out of the school. In fact, they suspended him. Yeah, and he didn't do anything about the basilisk. The only solution that he came up with was, I've got to close down the school. The third book, he doesn't manage to help them out with Sirius Black. All he does is tell them, like, turn this time turner back 3 times and make sure you save the Hippogriff as well. And then the fourth one, he basically just stands, what is seemingly just kind of watches everything happen from the sidelines. So, I mean, to make an extremely long book short, the main kind of focus on this was the relationship between Harry and his friends, in particular Ron. Ron, you find out how petty Ron is. He's basically upset with him throughout a bit of the book. A lot of the movie, in the movie, it seems to take a lot longer of a time where he's not on speaking terms with Ron, because Ron thinks that Harry's fooled him, and he put his name into the Goblet of Fire. Now, I think very early on you realize that Ron doesn't actually believe this, but he's too much of an asshole to believe that he's wrong, or to like apologize, because he knows Harry at this point. He's been his boy for like 3 years. He knows that Harry ain't gonna do something like, you know, let's say like putting his name in the Goblet of Fire without telling him, but he feels betrayed, so he's an asshole, and they have a falling out. But in the book, it seems to be a lot shorter of a falling out than in the movies. I don't know why. It seems to be like a falling out for like only a short amount of time. But in the film, they do a lot better of a job kind of showing Harry being isolated from everybody. And I think that carries over into the other films and books as well. It seems like in the fourth movie, everybody's against him. Not so much in the book. In the book, it seems more like everybody is a little bit more on his side. At least he doesn't feel as lonely. Let's just say that. But yeah, to make a long story short, at the whole film gets to the point, or the whole story gets to the point where they get to the last challenge of the Triwizard Tournament, where Harry's done really well. He's tied for first place, and at the end they have to go into this maze, which is the last challenge. We won't go through all the challenges; it'll take too much time. But the last challenge is a maze. He gets to the end of it with Cedric Diggory, who's the other Hogwarts champion, the other guy who's been selected by the Goblet of Fire. They both get to the end and they get transported to a graveyard, and this graveyard is where Peter Pettigrew and his boy, what remains of Lord Voldemort, are there, and they carry out a spell, they carry out some evil magic, and it revives Lord Voldemort. So the overarching story and the ending of Goblet of Fire is that Lord Voldemort returned. He's been revived. And I always felt this ever since reading it for the first time as a kid, and it still carries over to this day, is how simple... No, not that. It's how simple the potion or spell was, the magic that they carried out to revive Voldemort. To revive this dude, they got... so the slave had cut off his hand. They got the bone of his dead dad and the blood of his enemy.
Well, the bone of Voldemort's dad.
Yeah, of Voldemort's dad.
Okay, and the blood of his enemy.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason why they had to do it now was because they needed Harry.
Oh yeah, the whole point was they wanted to get into the graveyard to get his blood in order to carry out this magic. But the magic seemed very simple for something that seems quite difficult, which is you're giving somebody a form again, you're giving somebody life. All you need apparently is the flesh. I didn't think he needed to give his whole hand. He probably could have taken off some skin off his finger and put it into the pot. But for some reason he felt he needed to chop off his own hand. But it was the flesh of the slave, bone of the father, and blood of the enemy. And I was just there like, well, that seems like quite a simple spell. So if you die again, that's all you need to do again. You just need to get Harry's blood. You need to get a toe bone of your dad, and you sacrifice your slave's other hand. You know.
Yeah, if anything, at this point, just to make it easier, you might as well get like a couple of vials of Harry's blood.
Yeah.
And just keep it in your pocket just in case, you know.
Yeah. So, I suppose the most important thing at the end of this is you realize that Harry manages to escape with Cedric Diggory's body, who's being killed by Peter Pettigrew. And what you find out is that Voldemort and Harry, their wands have a shared core. So it's made from the same kind of magical material, and that being Phoenix feather. And what they didn't mention in the films, which isn't really important but it's cool, is Fawkes, Dumbledore's Phoenix. His feather is the core of both of their wands.
Okay.
Like I say, not important to the plot, but it's quite cool. But their wands recognize that their cores are the same and they can't kill each other.
Right. Yeah.
At least something like that. But at the very least, it makes Voldemort weaker against Harry, and there's all sorts of other stuff that happens. There's like some other magic that happens, but it's Voldemort thought he was gonna kill Harry, but Harry managed to escape because of that connection that their wands have. And then at the end, you find out that the Ministry is basically trying to cover it up. Not because they're deliberately trying to cover up, because the Minister doesn't want to believe that Voldemort is back, and the only thing he's got to go off on is words that Harry said. They're having to go off, a 14-year-old kid's word that Voldemort is back, even though there's a dead body right there. They were like, oh yeah, he just died. He just happened to die. We're not going to explain to the world that we think that Dumbledore, like the most powerful good wizard, he believes Harry is right. He's given an explanation that it was Voldemort all along, but they're like, nope, it can't be, and they're frightened. I mean, I suppose it's, once again, it is very realistic. I was like, our government would do exactly that. If something bad gonna happen, they would just cover it the hell up. And and that kind of leads into the fifth book, which is a carryover of the end of the fourth book in terms of it shows the Ministry of Magic trying to make Harry look bad in front of the public because they're trying to keep everybody from believing that Voldemort's alive because they don't believe it themselves. So yeah, what do you remember about the fifth one?
Well, let's be quick with this because we've taken a lot of time on this. But I remember this. Yeah, they're trying to make Harry look bad. They bring in Dolores Umbridge as like the headmaster of Hogwarts, or a teacher. I think it was headmaster. And her sole role in this movie seems to be, I'm going to break down Harry. I'm going to break down his courage, his bravery, his perseverance, all of that stuff. I'm gonna take away from him. So like if he says anything about Voldemort being back, she forces him to write down on like that paper using that special quill that what I'm telling lies and things like that. And what that does is it cuts the words into the back of his hand, if I remember correctly, into the back of his hand, which is that's an awesome idea, by the way. Really, really creative quill and idea by J.K. Rowling. So that's kind of the main thing, which is Dolores Umbridge. But I think I can't actually remember what happens much in Order of the Phoenix. I know they introduced the Order of the Phoenix, which are a selection of wizards who are kind of supporting Harry. So whereas the Ministry of Magic are trying to tear him down, the Order of Phoenix are trying to protect him. So you have wizards here who are like Mad-Eye Moody, you have Tonks, you have Remus, you have Sirius. I think Dumbledore, is he part of the Order, I think?
Yep, yeah, he is. He's the leader of the Order.
Yeah. And then you have Harry, who wants to join the Order, but I don't think they let him because he's underage, but their purpose is to protect him. So yeah, it's about the Order, the Ministry, Dolores, and all that type of stuff. But I can't remember how Voldemort ties into this movie, or if he does at all.
Oh yeah, he does, but only towards the end. So you find out that Harry keeps on having visions throughout the whole book and throughout the whole movie, really. He keeps on seeing this corridor, which ends up being a place in the Ministry of Magic, which contains something that Voldemort wants, which is supposed to be like a weapon, and you find out later where it is. But we'll kind of try and shove 5, 6, and 7 into as short as we can. Like, we'll shove them together, merge them together. So, obviously, the Ministry of Magic is trying to make Harry look like a numpty, trying to make Dumbledore look like a fool to the public. And the public is, on their side because, whatever you read is going to obviously influence your decisions. So very, very kind of realistic, in my opinion. The Ministry of Magic is leaning heavily on, the biggest newspaper. And they're all, writing propaganda and stuff against Harry and Dumbledore. All the way through this book. Once again, Dumbledore's fucking useless. He doesn't explain anything to Harry at all. He ignores him throughout this book. So Harry's feeling very isolated. He's just like, well, why isn't this guy talking to me? Like, they try to expel him at the beginning of this story. because he from Hogwarts because he had to use magic because Dementors were for some reason on the same road as Harry, and to save himself and his cousin, he used a Patronus. So yeah, to make a long story extremely short, you get introduced to what you were saying, the Order of the Phoenix, and they were telling Harry about this stuff, like, you know, we're doing all this investigation to see what Voldemort's after. Harry sees these visions throughout the book. He manages to save Ron's dad accidentally by seeing one of these visions, but at the same time he kind of feels weird because he's like, oh, you know, I'm actually inside Voldemort or his snake at the time of these visions, and it feels like he's getting all these, like, you know, evil feelings and stuff like that. And what the interesting thing about Umbridge is what they explain in the books that they didn't in the films is that she sent the Dementors to Harry.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, in the books and the films. In the next film, she's still in the Ministry of Magic.
But why did she send them to Harry to try and get him expelled?
Yeah.
That's weird. Like, surely you can't just send Dementors into the Muggle world, but you can't just set them on civilians and be like, yeah, and then expect to maintain and.
But that was the thing.
Hold your job.
That was the premise that Dumbledore made as an argument for Harry. You know, when they had the hearing.
Yeah.
So he said that I've been saying to you guys for years that we shouldn't be using Dementors because they're in line with Voldemort.
Yeah.
But if you don't think he's alive, then the question remains. Then only somebody from the Ministry could have ordered the Dementors. If you guys think you're in control of the Dementors, that means somebody from the Ministry sent them.
Yeah.
And so he said that at the hearing, and then they were like, "Oh, what are you talking about? Like, why would we send it?" And it turns out he was right. Somebody from the Ministry did send them. So on Ministry orders, the Dementors got sent to around where he lives. Yeah, so she's an evil wench as well. And for some reason they still got her to work at the Ministry after that, which is strange. I don't, like, you know, it's like they completely ignored those things.
The actress they cast, by the way, for Dolores Umbridge.
Perfect.
Good casting.
Perfect. It really was.
Good
yeah, so I mean, the book is not too much different from the film. I think the film did a really good job in terms of shortening that long ass book. Yeah, it could have been a bit shorter. Like, not much happens, like, you know, really, like, in terms of big plot points. It is more like exposition and stuff like that, and, like, you know, setting up kind of a lonely feeling. I suppose the kind of conclusion of the fifth film is that there's a prophecy. That was what Voldemort was after inside the Ministry of Magic, and this prophecy essentially says that Harry has to defeat Voldemort, or Voldemort has to defeat Harry. Like, nobody can live while the other one survives. And what they didn't explain in the films, which they explained in the books, is that the person referenced, the child that was referenced in this prophecy, saying that the prophecy was like, yeah, there's this child that's going to be born on this date, well, in this month, actually not this date, is going to defeat the Dark Lord Voldemort, and that was why Voldemort went to kill Harry.
Yeah.
But the reality is, it wasn't. It didn't need to be Harry. There was actually 2 children born in July, and it was one of Harry's other mates, Neville Longbottom. So he could have, Voldemort could have actually turned up at Longbottom's house, and he could have been the one with the scar. But there's a little bit of psychoanalysis going on. Voldemort, for some reason, I don't know if it was because of relatability, went for the wizard, who was a half-blood rather than a pureblood.
What, Neville was a pureblood?
Yeah. For whatever reason, he thought that the half-blood was going to be more dangerous to him, so he chose Harry. Or maybe he didn't even consider Longbottom. He just thought, yeah, it's got to be this guy. It's got to be this kid.
But he did send to Neville's yard as well.
What you say?
Bellatrix. But he did send people to Neville Longbottom's yard as well.
That was beforehand. and that kind of links with the prophecy. The prophecy is that the parents have defied the Dark Lord 3 times or something like that, and I think both pairs of parents. And actually, his parents got Neville Longbottom's parents got done over after Voldemort was defeated. So it was by like the remaining supporters for about a year or so afterwards. They were being rounded up, and these guys were attempting to try and revive Voldemort. They didn't know how, and they tortured the Longbottoms, but that was after Voldemort died. But then it goes into the sixth book film. That one's a bit of a weird one because everything seems a bit more relaxed. So at the end of the 5th film, Voldemort's being exposed. Like the Ministry of Magic find out he's alive because he turns up at the Ministry of Magic, and a lot of people see him. So the Minister of Magic gets fired basically because the outcry, because they were like, you were covering this up, and he's like, and so he's like very guiltily, and he was useless.
It was a Sue Gray report.
Yeah.
Said, Voldemort's alive, and he's like, oh shit.
Yeah. To make a long story short, Harry's godfather, Sirius Black, dies. Harry blames himself for it because he was fooled into thinking that Sirius was at the Ministry of Magic, but he wasn't. He was afterwards. But they were fooled into going into the Ministry of Magic to get this prophecy by Lord Voldemort. But yeah, so the 6th film is him kind of dealing with a bit of grief. But the tonality is just completely strange because it's like the gap between the last book and the book that you find out that that everybody finds out that in the series that everybody finds out that Voldemort's alive, and they use this 6th book as an exposition piece, so you get to find out a lot of backstory for Voldemort, and a lot of it I didn't find was completely necessary, and they took it out in the film, completely honest. So they're trying to research how to kill Voldemort, and they find out some very disturbing information, which is kind of a roundup of this whole book, which is there's this dark magic called Horcruxes, which by killing people you can split your soul, and you can put your soul into your segments of your soul into everyday items. Realistically, there would be so they were trying to track what these items are, but essentially what it means is that you have to destroy 6 items, and the reason why they said 6 was because they managed to track down Voldemort saying that he wants to split his soul into 7. So there's his own soul, his own body, which his soul is in. So that's one part, which they didn't really explain in the books very well. They did explain it, but not as well. And then there's 6 items. Yeah. And so they have to track down these 6 items, only one of which they get by the end of the 6th book, and it turns out it's a fake. So that diary from the 2nd book, that was one of them. So Harry's already killed one. And there was a ring that Dumbledore found, which he's destroyed. And so in the 6th film, you find out that Dumbledore's quite unwell. He has like an arm which is all shrinkled. It's all like dried up and everything, and that was because he attempted to put on that ring, and it had some dark magic on it. At the end of the film, essentially after finding out all this information, Dumbledore gets killed by Snape. And so you must remember the 7th film if we move on to that, because essentially that's all that happens in the 6th film. Like when you look at it from a plot point, is that Dumbledore gets killed by Snape. They find out about these Horcruxes. It's the betrayal and also the plot point for the 7th movie. And the 7th movie is they've got to find the rest of these Horcruxes, destroy them, and then they can have an opportunity to kill Voldemort. So what do you remember from the 7th one to round things off?
So the 7th one, I just remember them. It was him, Hermione, Ron. They all go and try to find these Horcruxes, and they have no idea where any of them be.
Bit of a backdrop. At this point, Voldemort's infiltrated the Ministry of Magic. They've managed to, his followers, the Death Eaters, they've managed to take control of the Ministry of Magic. So in order for them to find these Horcruxes, they can't return to Hogwarts. So this 7th book is a weird one because it's not actually taking place much, at least the first 3 quarters, at Hogwarts, because the Hogwarts is being run by Death Eaters.
Yeah.
So yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so they're not in Hogwarts. They're outside now in the normal world, trying to find these Horcruxes. And it's like along the way they have to meet these certain wizards. So they meet, I think it was Dumbledore's older brother, was it? Forgotten his name.
Aberforth.
Like, Aberforth, yeah.
Yeah, they meet him a lot later.
Yeah, but basically, I just remember this movie being about them hunting Horcruxes. There's another falling out, I think, between Ron and Harry.
Yeah.
They had the Sword of Godric Gryffindor. I don't think this was the Dumbledore taking ketamine scene. That was beforehand. And they learn about the Deathly Hallows, which is kind of like a legend, or not even a legend. Essentially it's a legend and kind of history about 3 very key items. So one was, I think, the Philosopher's Stone.
Nope.
One is
no.
It's
a different stone. It's called the Resurrection Stone.
The Resurrection Stone, yeah. One is the Resurrection Stone. One is the Invisibility Cloak, and one is the Elder Wand. And I've forgotten the stories that go with it. It was like, oh yeah, there were 3 wizards who were like trying to cross a bridge or something, and then for some reason they encountered Death, and Death was like, yo, what's up, guys? And for some reason they had 3 things granted to them. I'm not sure why, and those were those items.
It was a bit of a malevolent plot by Death. It's like a nursery rhyme. So this story could absolutely not be true. I think Dumbledore said he actually believes it was a case of, it was just a nursery rhyme made for 3 very talented wizards who actually just went ahead and made those items. It wasn't gifted to them by Death.
Okay.
But Death kind of malevolently said, you cross this bridge. They crossed this bridge using magic. So in his eyes, they were supposed to die. So his evil plan was, I'll give you 3 items, any of your choice, as a reward for crossing this bridge. But in reality, he was thinking, these items are going to cause their deaths. So, yeah, so one of them asked for the Elder Wand. Because the Elder Wand was boasted about, the person the brother who asked for the wand ended up getting his throat slit and killed. So Death managed to claim him. The one who got the Resurrection Stone drove himself crazy, because the Resurrection Stone shows you your loved ones who are dead, and he killed himself. So Death managed to claim him. The only one who managed to really get away in a way was the guy with the invisibility cloak, the brother, because he managed to escape Death using the invisibility cloak, and he only went to Death of his own accord by saying, okay, I'm ready to die now. But yeah, the Deathly Hallows I'm a bit kind of weirded out on, because they spent so much time trying to research these Deathly Hallows, and in reality they weren't overly important to the story.
Apart from like the Elder Wand.
The Elder Wand, knowing that he had the Elder Wand, I don't think it would have affected the story too much. It was something that, it was a nice to know, but it was more for exposition's sake. So the whole kind of story for the 7th book was, because of that whole, the Harry's wand links to Voldemort's wand, and he can't kill Harry. The logic for Voldemort was, I've got to find a powerful wand then. And he knew about this Elder Wand. So he goes to find it. So he gets this Elder Wand. But ultimately, that doesn't actually help him kill Harry in the end. And Harry knowing about it, I don't feel it made too much of a difference. But yeah, essentially, the whole story is about them finding these Horcruxes. And then when they've killed all the Horcruxes, Harry finds out that he was accidentally made into a Horcrux. So on the day that Voldemort attempted to kill him when he was a child, Voldemort accidentally made Harry into a Horcrux, and it's why he's got the scar and why he's got a lot of abilities that Voldemort has. And the way around it, and they didn't really explain it too much, is that the way to get rid of that Horcrux is that Voldemort has to kill Harry. But it doesn't actually. So he ultimately, at the end of the film, has to have a fight with, has to go to Voldemort, and Voldemort attempts to kill him, but he fails. So when he kills him, he kills the Horcrux part of himself, but Harry's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a duel off, and because the Elder Wand wasn't, and they didn't explain this in the films correctly, it wasn't won correctly. You have to one magic is a bit weird. You have to win a wand against a wizard, and then will that wand work for you properly. And Voldemort didn't win the wand off Dumbledore, who used to own the wand beforehand. It was Malfoy. So the Elder Wand wasn't going to work for Voldemort fully. So he had to do it with Harry, and Harry beat him, essentially. Because the killing curse that Voldemort used backfired on him again. But this time there's no Horcruxes to keep his soul alive.
Yeah.
So yeah, the 7th book was a lot more palatable than I remember it being. I remember it being quite long, but I think that's probably because I've seen the film so many times. The films, because they split the 7th book into 2 films, is a lot more droning, is a lot more elongated. A lot of the empty spaces feel like empty spaces, and it's a lot more miserable than the book. Holy shit, the films are miserable compared to the book. Even though, like, you know, they detail out, like, you know, some more of the deaths in the book, just the overall tone of the films is a lot more miserable.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, the whole Harry Potter franchise is awesome. I mean, most of us have watched it, especially us guys who like grew up with them. So it'd be interesting to see if anybody hasn't watched them at this point. That would be a more, especially around our age and younger.
Yeah, I think a lot of the younger generation won't have watched them or read them. But a lot of people will at least be aware of what it is. If you're not aware of what it is, that'd be shocking.
That's on you.
Yeah. You've been doing something wrong.
Yeah. I mean, this episode is an extremely shortened down version of the kind of overarching plots of all of these books. I would recommend, you know, if at the very least, if you're not going to read the books, watching a few of the movies. The tonality does shift, like, you know, from, you know, like a child's book all the way. It's not even a child's book. Like, Philosopher's Stone's tonality is very young teenager, I would say. And then, like, you know, then it goes more to the tonality of, you know, teenager reaching adulthood. So that's very cool. But that's all I've got to say on the Harry Potter series without taking too long. I'd strongly recommend you guys watch the movies or read the books.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right, that would be it for our episode of 1000 Calorie Cheese Sauce. See you guys again next week.
Peace.